Dr. House took a police officer toy out of a boy's nose, which shocked him. The weird thing was that the little boy kept crying. Even though the toy had already been removed, House decided to keep exploring. As expected, he pulled out another toy from the boy's nose. Everyone was instantly confused. Was his nose a warehouse? Taking a closer look, this time the toy was a firefighter. The next day, the boy was back again, based on past experience. Dr. House suspected there might still be something in his nose. After feeling around for a while, he pulled out a red fire truck. House was very puzzled. Why did this kid keep stuffing things into one nostril? The boy's older brother thought there might be something wrong with his brain, but House didn't think so. Looking at this lineup, a fireman, a fire truck, and a police officer, it was clear one more victim was missing. House quickly opened the cabinet, took out a remote-controlled magnet, instantly pulled in the scalpel from 3 feet away. Then House asked his brother to lift the boy's head. He placed the magnet into the boy's nostril. Soon a kitten was sucked out. The reason why the boy had been crying was finally revealed. He had been sending in teams to rescue the trapped kitten. A fire broke out in an apartment building. A young boy was dangling out the window. He was about to lose his grip. Fortunately, the firefighters arrived at the scene in time. Crews quickly dispersed the onlookers. He told the boy to hold on. They would rescue him soon. Other firefighters brought a long ladder. But suddenly, the boy's hand slipped. At the critical moment, crews caught the boy with his bare hands. The boy's name was Javi. After an examination, he was found to have light smoke inhalation. Javi said that 2 of his friends were still inside the fire. When the other firefighters reached the burning floor, they quickly searched the apartment. Eventually, they found 2 more boys hiding inside a cabinet. After the fire was completely extinguished, the firefighters launched an investigation into the cause of the fire. Strangely, they found multiple ignition points in the apartment. At that moment, the investigators suddenly noticed that the swing arm looked unusual. It seemed that the arsonist was one of the 3 boys. They went to the hospital to find Javi, hoping to learn the real cause of the fire. It turned out that the boys had picked up a bag of ping-pong balls, wondering if they could burn. So they put the balls in a bowl and then threw in a match. Little did they know ping-pong balls are made of nitrocellulose, which is basically a low-grade explosive. The boys panicked. They tried to put out the fire with a pillow, but accidentally knocked over the bowl. The ping-pong balls rolled everywhere, and that was how the fire started.
The man weighing 700 pounds went to see the doctor, but the doctor faced a dilemma. The thick layer of fat on the man's body made it impossible to locate his veins. Even more, when the doctor lifted his abdominal skin, he discovered that the folded skin had already decayed and emitted a foul odor. It turned out that the man's wife was pregnant, and the man who had been lying in bed for 3 years had to enter the hospital for treatment for the sake of the soon-to-be-born child. However, before everything could begin, the man got stuck at the first hurdle. The spacious hospital bed simply couldn't pass through the narrow door. They even contemplated removing the door frame. The man, who hadn't been out of bed for several years, suddenly flipped over and got out of bed. He believed that walking a few steps should be within his capabilities. At first, everything seemed fine, and planting his feet on the ground made the man feel like he had been given a new lease on life. However, his fragile ankles could no longer support his weight. After the man fell, it resulted in a severe fracture of both ankles. After considerable effort, the man was finally lifted back onto the hospital bed. Just then, a young and beautiful woman arrived at the bedside.
I'm sorry, and you are?
I'm his wife.
This scene really astonished the doctors on the spot. But the performance of the intern that followed nearly infuriated Dr. Bailey.
Well, we're gonna have a baby. I'm pregnant.
How? I mean, wow, congratulations.
The doctor removed a colossal 25 feet tapeworm from the girl's stomach. However, she did not feel anything at all. Even more terrifying, she underwent the surgery without a single drop of anesthesia. She watched with her own eyes as the worm was slowly pulled out. With such a long parasite wreaking havoc inside her stomach, no wonder she could eat without gaining weight, and still had no sense of pain. A few days ago, the girl, Hannah, was sent to the emergency room after a car accident. While treating her wounds, she suddenly screamed. But Dr. House said she had CIPA, a condition that makes her insensitive to pain, and her reaction was just an act. Dr. Foreman thought it was impossible. This was an extremely rare disease, with only 60 known cases worldwide. However, House was convinced that Hannah was one of them to prove himself, right? He hit her calf with his cane while she wasn't paying attention. Hannah showed no reaction at all. This made Foreman take it more seriously, so he arranged for her to undergo a full examination. But Hannah became agitated and refused to cooperate, shouting and demanding to see her mother. The assistant doctors couldn't handle her, so they had no choice but to call House himself. Hannah said that having no pain was great, and there was no need for unnecessary tests. She even said she had burned herself on a stove at 3 years old, but still lived just fine. Afraid the doctors wouldn't believe her, she deliberately lifted her shirt to show them. Seizing the opportunity, House injected her with a sedative. Hannah instantly collapsed. However, all her test results came back normal. Just as Cameron was taking her temperature, Hannah suddenly fainted and began convulsing. pulsing, her temperature skyrocketed to 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Cameron poured a bag of ice water over her body and used ice packs for physical cooling, finally bringing her fever down. To find the cause of Hannah's illness, the doctors asked her to move her hand from ice water to boiling water. Her hand became badly burned and covered in blisters, but she felt nothing. The doctors then tried another approach. They secured her head in place and, without anesthesia, drilled a hole in her skull. Hannah not only didn't feel pain, but even calmly chatted with the doctors. At that moment, she suddenly saw something terrifying, screamed loudly, and began resisting. The doctors hurriedly removed the brace. By then, Hannah's face was covered in blood. Foreman quickly asked her how she felt, but she gave a strange smile, then pushed the doctor aside and ran out. She rushed all the way to the hospital's balcony railing. The doctors tried to convince her to come down first, but Hannah no longer trusted anyone. She believed they just wanted to make her suffer. Suddenly, she lost all feeling in her legs. Foreman initially thought she was faking it again, but before he could react, she lost her balance and fell. Luckily, it wasn't too high, so her life was not in danger. However, the fall fractured 6 of her ribs and gave her signs of a concussion, yet Hannah still felt no pain.
I feel fine.
To the doctors, this was not a good sign. Her vital signs were deteriorating, and she could die within hours. Her erratic behavior and paralysis indicated that a specific nerve component had been damaged. House ordered his assistant to conduct a nerve biopsy, but what they discovered was shocking. The central nerve fibers they extracted had lost part of their insulation layer. However, the entire nerve bundle's insulation was peeling off. SEPA wouldn't cause this kind of degeneration. This meant the damage was external, caused by a systemic disease affecting her nerves. Hannah's life was in grave danger. Fortunately, by then her mother's surgery was complete. Cameron brought her to her mother's hospital room, seeing her mother's injuries. Hannah suddenly developed a severe headache, her first time feeling pain in her life. Since this symptom appeared right after seeing her mother's condition, House believed it was triggered by guilt. She blamed herself for her mother's suffering. So Hannah felt guilty, which caused her headache. A lack of vitamin B12 could trigger guilt, but the ER had already given her B12 when she was admitted, along with multiple vitamins. The diagnosis reached a deadlock. House consulted oncologist Dr. Wilson about Hannah's condition, as he casually grabbed Wilson's sandwich to eat.
Is it possible for you to just watch me eat? Or do you get some primeval thrill out of beating the other hunters to the food?
He suddenly had a breakthrough. House rushed into Hannah's room, stopping the assistant from administering more sedatives. He confirmed that her condition was indeed caused by a B12 deficiency. As for why the previous supplements hadn't worked, it was because something else had absorbed them, ignoring Hannah's resistance. House had her sent straight to the operating room. Without anesthesia, he used a scalpel to cut open her stomach.
She's faking it. We're not falling for it this time.
Hannah immediately calmed down. The doctors in the operating room were confused at first, but when they saw House's next move, they were utterly shocked. A parasite had been living inside Hannah, absorbing all her nutrients, causing her paranoid delusions. It took House a full 2 minutes to extract the entire worm from her body, even though she still had CIPA. At least now she wouldn't keep getting injured for no reason, risking her life.